Imagine waking up in America 200 years ago. There's no toaster waiting on the counter, no box of cereal in the cupboard, and definitely no fast food drive-thru on the corner. Breakfast back then was not only about filling your stomach, it was about survival, tradition, and making use of what little you had. These were meals that came straight from the land, from farm to table, and from hearth to plate. Today, we are going to rediscover 25 forgotten American breakfasts. Some are hearty, some are humble, and some might surprise you completely. But each one tells a story about how Americans used to start their day, so grab a cup of coffee or maybe a plate of biscuit sand. Let us dive into the past. 1. Cornmeal mush. If you grew up in the early 19th century, there's a good chance your day started with cornmeal mush. A simple porridge of ground corn simmered slowly in water or milk. It was warm, filling, and cheap. Families would often top it with molasses for sweetness, or butter and salt for something savory. The beauty of mush was its versatility. Leftovers were poured into a pan, cooled until firm, and then sliced and fried the next morning, creating crispy golden squares with a soft center. It was peasant food in the best sense, humble but satisfying. 2. Fried apples and biscuits. Picture the smell of apples sizzling in a cast-iron skillet, mixed with butter and a dusting of cinnamon sugar. That was the breakfast aroma in many Appalachian homes. Fried apples, golden and slightly caramelized, paired perfectly with soft, flaky biscuits. This was not just a breakfast, it was comfort food. Families who lived in orchard-rich areas could preserve apples for the winter, ensuring this dish could be enjoyed year-round. 3. Buckwheat pancakes. Long before fluffy buttermilk stacks dominated diners, buckwheat pancakes were the star of the griddle. With a deep, earthy flavor, darker color, and slightly nutty bite, they were especially popular in the Northeast and Appalachian regions. Served with maple syrup or sorghum molasses, they gave farmers long-lasting energy. Unlike refined wheat flour, buckwheat grew well in poor soil, making it a lifeline crop for rural families. 4. Scrapple. Born from Pennsylvania Dutch frugality, scrapple was the original nose-to-tail breakfast. It's made from pork scraps mixed with cornmeal and spices. It was poured into a loaf pan, cooled, sliced, and pan-fried until crispy outside and soft inside. For German immigrants who settled in Pennsylvania, scrapple was a taste of home, practical, flavorful, and deeply satisfying. Even today, some mid-Atlantic diners still serve it, though many Americans have never tried it. 5. Hominy grits. Before instant grits appeared in grocery stores, traditional hominy grits were labor-intensive. Corn kernels were soaked in lye water, hulled and ground into coarse grains. The result was hearty, slightly chewy, and incredibly versatile. Eaten with butter, cheese, or gravy, grits were especially beloved in the South, where they became synonymous with hospitality. 6. Johnnycakes. Think of Johnnycakes as the ancestor of modern pancakes. These flat, cornmeal-based cakes were cooked on hot griddles, or even on flat stones by Native Americans. Early settlers adopted them quickly because cornmeal was cheap and widely available. Portable and long-lasting, Johnnycakes were the breakfast of pioneers heading westward across the frontier. 7. Cold fried chicken. Today, fried chicken is a dinner star, but in the 19th century, it often appeared at breakfast, especially cold leftovers from the night before. In the South, cold fried chicken paired with biscuits or cornbread was a hearty, no-fuss morning meal. Imagine grabbing a crispy drumstick with your morning coffee. Strange to us now, but back then it was perfectly normal. 8. Oyster stew. Coastal communities in New England and the mid-Atlantic often began their mornings with something that would surprise us today: oyster stew. Made with fresh oysters, simmered in cream, butter, and a sprinkle of pepper, this dish was considered both nourishing and restorative. Oysters were cheap and plentiful in the 1800s, making them a common food for working families. 9. Salt pork and beans. For pioneers and farmers, salt pork and beans were breakfast fuel. Salted pork belly, fried until crisp, was served alongside beans that had often been cooking overnight. Protein, dense, and calorie-rich. This breakfast was not about indulgence, it was about surviving a long day of labor. The salty, smoky flavor of pork seeped into the beans, creating a meal that was as flavorful as it was practical. 10. Creamed chipped beef on toast. Nicknamed SOS by soldiers. This dish of dried beef in a creamy white gravy spooned over toast became a staple in the early 1900s and during wartime. For military recruits, it was cheap, filling, and easy to prepare in bulk. At home, it became a symbol of post-war American breakfasts, feeding millions of families during lean times. 11. Molasses on bread. Sometimes breakfast was as simple as a slice of fresh bread drizzled with thick, dark molasses. This inexpensive meal gave a quick sugar boost, often paired with a glass of milk. For poor farming families, it was a sweet treat that required almost no preparation. Molasses was cheaper than refined sugar, making it the sweetener of choice in many households. 12. Hash, not to be confused with hash browns. Old-fashioned hash was a skillet of chopped leftover meat mixed with potatoes and onions. Fried until golden and crispy, it transformed scraps into something delicious. Every family had their own version, depending on what leftovers were available. It was the original waste not, want not breakfast. 13. Hoe cakes. Legend has it that hoe cakes got their name because they were cooked on the flat blade of a hoe over an open flame. Whether true or not, this southern staple was essentially a fried cornmeal cake, crisp on the outside and tender inside. George Washington himself was known to enjoy them with honey or syrup. 14. Apple pan dowdy. Imagine a rustic pie for breakfast: stewed apples, topped with a rough pastry crust, baked until bubbling and golden. That was apple pan dowdy, sweet, filling, and comforting. It was a way for families to use up aging apples. The crust was often dowdied or broken up during baking, which gave the dish its unusual name. 15. Fish and cornbread in fishing towns. The day often began with the morning's catch. Fried or smoked fish paired with fresh cornbread created a hearty breakfast rich in protein. For coastal communities, it was simply practical. Why wait until dinner to eat what the ocean provided that very morning? 16. Boston brown bread in New England. Boston brown bread was a breakfast classic. Steamed in coffee cans, it was made from cornmeal, rye flour, wheat flour, and molasses. Dense, slightly sweet and moist, it was often served with butter or alongside baked beans. Its unique steaming method gave it a distinctive texture unlike any other bread. 17. Wheat tana. Cereal. Before there were sugary boxes of cereal, there was wheat tana, toasted wheat hot cereal, popular in the early 1900s. Marketed as a health food, it was served with milk and sugar, much like cream of wheat. In an era obsessed with digestion and pure foods, Wheatena promised both nourishment and moral virtue in a bowl. 18. Buttered toast with gravy. Farmhouse kitchens often stretched leftovers creatively. Day-old bread toasted and covered with sausage gravy or, sometimes just milk gravy or, is a comforting stick dash to dash your ribs breakfast. It was not fancy, but it was the kind of meal that made you feel taken care of. 19. Dandelion greens with eggs. Spring meant foraging, and dandelion greens were one of the first fresh foods to appear after winter. Lightly in bacon fat and paired with eggs, they brought color and freshness to the table. For rural families, this dish was not just about flavor, it was about celebrating the changing seasons.
20.
Rice pudding. Rice pudding was not reserved for dessert. Many immigrant families, especially those from Europe, served it for breakfast. Cold or warm, sweetened with sugar and cinnamon, it was comforting and economical. Leftover rice from dinner was easily transformed into a creamy breakfast treat. 21. Pork and hominy. This dish combined Native American tradition with European tastes. Hominy, made from treated corn, was stewed with pork until tender and flavorful. The combination of smoky meat and nutty corn made it a hearty morning dish in the South and Midwest. 22. Corn dodgers. Corn dodgers were small fried cakes of cornmeal, crispy on the outside and tender inside. Cowboys, pioneers, and Civil War soldiers relied on them because they were portable, filling, and easy to make over a campfire. They might not have been glamorous, but they kept people moving. 23. Baked apples. A warm baked apple stuffed with raisins, nuts, or a pat of butter was a healthy and satisfying way to begin the day. Baked slowly until tender, the apples released a natural sweetness that required little sugar. It was a breakfast that felt indulgent without being wasteful. 24. Fried bologna and eggs. By the early 20th century, bologna had become an inexpensive alternative to fresh meat. Sliced and fried until crisp around the edges, it was often paired with eggs for a quick, hearty breakfast. For working-class families, it was cheap, filling, and packed with flavor. 25. Hot water cornbread. Last but not least, hot water cornbread. Unlike baked cornbread, this version was made by mixing boiling water with cornmeal, shaping patties by hand, and frying them. The result was golden and crisp on the outside, soft inside. Served with gravy or beans, it was simple but unforgettable. And there you have it, 25 forgotten American breakfasts, each one a window into the past. These meals were about more than just food. They were about survival, resourcefulness, and tradition. Some were sweet, some were savory, and some might sound unusual today. But they all tell the story of America's mornings. Which of these breakfasts would you like to see make a comeback? Drop your pick in the comments, and maybe even try cooking one at home. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and join me again as we uncover more forgotten foods from America's past.